I'm Carol Cohn, and welcome to Purpose 360, the podcast that unlocks the power of purpose to ignite business and social impact. Today's conversation is going to be epic. Now, I'm sure you're saying, Carol, all your conversations, you strive to be epic. But today is about our new EPiQ diagnostic research tool. And EPiQ stands for Employee Purpose IQ. For those of you who have followed me over the years, I love research because we need to prove the strategic power of purpose at all different levels with all different stakeholders. This is our 31st piece of research since 1993, and we share it liberally. This one is going to be discussed today, and it's a dashboard. It's an in-depth dashboard. That's the deliverable of your employees, how they are responding to the company's purpose in categories such as organizational trust, credibility, societal impact. We all know that employees are the most important stakeholder to carry your purpose authentic messages. Indeed, in my previous podcast with Alan Murray from Fortune Media about his wonderful book, Tomorrow's Capitalist, he says employees are the best carrier of your message. Provide the most authenticity. And for those of you listening who have 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 or more employees, imagine if you understand their relationship with your organization's purpose, where is its strength, and you'll be able to identify ambassadors from this research. Imagine the messages that can be carried via their voice. Wow. How exciting. And our vision, hopefully, is that hundreds and hundreds of companies will take this on in the years ahead so that purpose will be even more powerfully viewed and executed as organizational strategy. It's an epic conversation, so let's get started. Today, I have one of my favorite people in the world coming back on the podcast, and that is Wendy Salomon, and she is Managing Director of Reputation and Corporate Strategy for the Harris Poll. So welcome back, Wendy.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be with you again.
And I have to say that for those of you who follow us, we have done research studies since 1993 to prove the strategic power of purpose in all sorts of ways that business conducts itself. And one of my best partners is Wendy and the Harris Poll. Today's conversation is going to be about a new diagnostic tool called EPiQ. And EPiQ stands for Employee Purpose IQ. And so that's a lot of research. But first, I just want to turn it over to Wendy, because Wendy, you've been a great partner and you also have tremendous depth as a research organization in the whole field of purpose. So can you share with our listeners just some of that great expertise?
The Harris Poll does a lot of proprietary research, a lot of research sort of for our own thought leadership and just to stay on top of trends in business and culture. And even if the focus of the research that we're doing is not on purpose, very often the conclusions and the insights point us there. So it's really important to understand that against the broader landscape, not just sort of looking for purpose, right? We're finding that companies that center themselves around purpose and that do so consistently, that do so generously in terms of their communications and how they engage externally and internally, are really being rewarded by Main Streets. And so we see purpose more and more in the analytic tools that we do for our clients as almost an essential ingredient, right? It's almost the thing that supersedes so many other things in the reputation space.
I love that you said an essential ingredient. This is something that companies must do. They must provide that really clear guiding light, the North Star, and then authentically utilize it with their core stakeholders for decision making, for strategy, for culture, for operations, for innovation. And people ask me, well, what was the impetus for EPiQ? And again, I have to give a shout out to my colleague, Risa Sherman, because she named it. And it's a great because, when I chat with people.
Because you didn't like my employee purpose maximizer index, like totally like spoken like a researcher. I love it.
It was. I went, great approach and name not so great. And Wendy, but I know Wendy was looking towards us because we're good at naming. So the impetus for this was that I believe in doing this work for decades, the number one stakeholder today is the employee. Employees are the engine of a company. And the shift, though, didn't happen until the last maybe 5, 6, 7 years. Previously employees were, we'll communicate it. They weren't asked a lot of questions. It was just they're there. They're fungible. If one leaves, we can get another. That's not the case anymore.
There's very much a virtuous circle going here, right? And we even saw that in our own research that we did as foundational to the EPiQ tool, which is, yes, purpose gives meaning to my work. And by the way, it makes me proud. But importantly, it also, when I'm aware of me being sort of your respondent, when an employee is aware of a company's purpose, it makes them feel accountable to act in line with it, right? So you're sort of creating this cycle, particularly for big companies. And by the way, when we do this research and we say how employees at big versus small companies are doing, big companies are lagging, right? Employees that are working for larger companies are not as aware, not as feeling as it's embedded, it's not as authentic, and all of those things. So I just want to add one thing to something you said earlier, Carol. It's okay.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
We're talking about this broader sense of sort of why measure the purpose investment. It's a very rational, pragmatic decision, right? To understand purpose, to use it as a business asset, to see it as an ingredient to all the outcomes. But so I'm in a privileged position where a lot of my clients, we measure multiple stakeholders. We measure investors and the media and their customers and their prospects and future talent, who's going to want to work for them, and their employees. And when I talk to them about their general diagnostic tools in most companies, employee research is kind of stuck in 1974, right? Like it's a lot about satisfaction and basic loyalty and should we repaint the cafeteria, right? And now we've moved more towards practical, sort of, are you willing to come back to the office? Like there's a lot of decisions that are being very, very specifically and surgically informed by employee research. But there is nothing out there right now that helps companies measure this critical ingredient, right? And so when you think about the scorecards for employees, they look like they did decades ago, when really what you need from employees is wildly different, right? So EPiQ actually serves that, just fills that void, if you ask me, right?
And again, to be really clear, I wanted to do this research because I always go to Wendy and say, Wendy, does this exist? Do we have the depth and breadth? Not just, do you know your purpose? And, 1 or 2 questions about it, but we really want to know the impact. And we want the impact according to the segmentation that the company has. So everything from, you've got generations, you've got in the office, hybrid worker working from home, you've got role, you've got geography, you've got knowledge of the company's purpose writ large. And so there are different segmentations that each company will bring with its own research. And Wendy, I want you to talk a little bit about how we work with a company using EPiQ, because we've had, I've presented EPiQ, I think, to about 30 or 40 companies so far. And we're getting universally the responses, wow, this is great. It's about time that we have this measurement depth because the output is the dashboard. And the dashboard, and, if you want to see some examples of this, you can go to our website, but also we're happy to walk you through it because it will take your investments, and the investments today are in the millions now on all the things surrounding employees and employee activation. And it makes, whether your programmatic's only a couple 100,000, but your recruiting, your retention, all of that, it makes it work so much harder. And you have a baseline. That's the one thing that we're getting greatest excitement when we talk to individuals. Wow, I've got a baseline.
This is also one of those internal tools within companies that puts purpose on the same measure as other metrics in a scorecard. The other thing, Carol, that you mentioned that I think is really important is the idea that one of the values of this, if I think about it from a company, and is sometimes research like this is, when you think about purpose, like, so you've got a campaign, you've got some activation strategy, you've got this, you're spending X amount of money to do it across your population. What EPiQ gives companies is a sense of actually where the need is greatest, right? So there's a pointiness to it. For example, in some of the things we've seen, we know that proximity to headquarters, like literally you could almost do a heat map of how well it's understood and integrated and leaders walk the talk and all the things. Headquarters, bright red and glowing, but then the further out, like they don't see that, they don't feel. So the idea is, do you need to spend evenly? We can identify where things fall off. And so there's a really important takeaway from all this is that how do we hone our purpose, time, and treasure? Right? How do we not use a really broad brush, but get a little more surgical? And I think that's what most companies are asking regardless. Is like, how do I do, sort of do more with less in some sense? And that could be time or money or whatever.
And I think that's brilliant. And we also, ultimately, we give you a score. You get an EPiQ score, and then it's broken out into various segments. But Wendy, why don't you talk about how the national survey and how that informed then the EPiQ tool?
Well, I think it's a few different things. First of all, if in full transparency, if Harris Poll's going to put its name on it, it's going to have rigor, right? And so the one thing we knew we had to do was just not have Carol and Wendy's gut tell them this is really an important asset and whatever. Yeah, so we had to do a little proof of concept. And so I think we did a large study and of 1,500, 1,500 employed Americans, employed full-time, the companies of a certain size. I think our threshold was 100 employees or more, so not micro businesses. And so we have this large data set. We asked a wide variety of elements around the different pillars of purpose. Now, we're not coming to this blind, right? So we knew the different directions to ask. But then what's important is that we send that to the Harris Poll's analytic lead, and he helps us identify the index where what we're measuring holds together in essence, right? Where these, and you'll see the purpose index itself, and again, available on the website. The purpose index itself is, again, in that there's three main broad areas, right? And there's some sub areas underneath each. So we can get into those things, and I'm happy to do that. But the one thing I want to mention about the poll is that it helps us understand some of those broader trends, right? In general, do employees feel that that staff at their company is rewarded when they lean into purpose, right? Which is a really important thing. But employees want a company's purpose to actually create meaning in the world. So we have some baselines there, which are really valuable in addition to helping us put together this tool. And what this foundational data set does, as Carol says, you get an EPiQ score, you get a score in the various areas of our index itself. And those three areas are sort of this North Star credibility. Like literally, are you trusted? Are your leaders seen as buying into it? The idea of talent and being embedded and being authentic and engaging employees in the purpose journey. And then lastly, the idea of activation. Is it fully, are you using it as a guide? Are you making decisions based on it? Do employees think that this actually is a lens through which the company is investing in developing products? And is it creating meaning and impact in the world? And what that foundational data set of those 1,500 interviews does, it helps us bridge back to that touchstone. And so really, it's not just your own score, but I think there's a real value in bridging back to that data set.
Again, from the larger survey, you came up with three core dimensions: credibility, talent, and activation. And I'm going to drill down deeper. But this allows who's ever bringing it, whether it's going to be the HR team or the communications team or the CSR ESG team, it takes you into the C-suite with a really powerful dashboard and tremendous credibility to say, I can pull on these various levers. We need to really work on the Northwest. That's where our R&D facility is. And, our purpose is not reaching down. And for example, our senior leadership is walking the talk there, but our managers, which are the managers in the middle, that's where this all breaks down.
And not only like helping me understand pockets within my organization, but also remember, it's also pockets of perception. So, maybe you learn people understand our purpose just fine, loud and clear. Oh my God, it's laminated on my bulletin board. Like I got it. But they don't believe that it's guiding our strategy. Right. And maybe and so it also tells you where in the process, not just where in the organization, but where in the purpose, full embedded activation, there's a vulnerability. So the idea is that you get almost a diagnostic tool, right, to help you pinpoint the where, but also the sort of what content, sort of what are the barriers to full activation. And importantly, by the way, just like we could say that R&D center in the West or whatever your example was, we can also say, people in this role fully bought in. So you can also find your ambassadors, right, to use in your programs. So it's not just about identifying the bad, it's identifying who is fully bought in. And it allows organizations to go to those managers and to understand best practices for fully bringing it to their employee population.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because you can't just roll this out with the toolkit, and the senior leaders, and then, okay, now let's give the toolkit to the managers, but the ambassadors, those people that truly step up. And a lot of them, by the way, are in EBNs or employee resource groups. And what we're finding is more and more companies are really leaning into their employee resource groups to activate their purpose, their values, their behaviors in action. So I love the point about finding your ambassadors. So let's talk about the deliverable. Can you talk a little bit about, you've got a dashboard. I think that we're looking at about, a 10-page report of the data. And then the other thing that we're going to provide, you're going to get Harris and you're going to get Carol Cohn on Purpose and our decades of expertise that's going to give you recommendations, high-level recommendations. But, how you can evolve the power of your purpose. So, Wendy, can you talk a little bit about the deliverables?
Sure, I can tell you what it is, and it is an 80-pound doorstop. So employer research in particular, right? You can cut it a million ways and, whatever. But it's intended for executive eyes. It's intended to be snackable, easily digestible. We talked about the different ways that we break things down. So yes, we break it down by the different parts of your organization, your overall score, your score on each of these three dimensions. Because remember, we want to diagnose not with a broad brush, but with a more fine surgical perspective on where in the organization and where in the purpose journey are things breaking down. And so we've really created the deliverable with that in mind, super snackable. Every company has something that they have to put in every research program. So rest assured, the EPiQ development does allow companies to put in a question or two. It also has an open-ended question, right? So it's not all sort of rote and sort of automatic. We want to make sure that what we're capturing isn't generic, but speaks their language, right? So the deliverables also are done with that in mind.
And I love the fact of the open-ended question, which we're going to recommend asking the question, what is our company's purpose? Because I think it will be illuminating to have a sense of where has it really activated? Where is it understood? Where is it totally misunderstood? I'm sure there'll be some very funny responses to it.
Yeah. Well, we saw that in the study that we did, we asked that question, and it's amazing how, to make high quality lights. That's clearly my company's purpose, like to make as much money as possible. So some of this is snarky, right? But we need to understand when employees say they understand your purpose, do they? So we have sort of a proven way in the survey to level set and to make sure that they're all moving forward with the right, sort of looking at the right purpose.
And then each year you can show where you're growing, where you've got to, invest, a little bit more here and there. It's that which gets measured gets done.
Totally. I love that. Yeah.
So in closing, Wendy, I just want to give you the last mic, and then I'll take it over because it's my show. But But it's funny interviewing myself, but I love that too. You're great to work with. So any additional comments for those listening where they're going like, well, I don't know. We've got, we use the XYZ surveys already. Any additional closing comments?
Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of employee surveys, and this is really something different. And I think helps those in a purpose function measure their progress, yes, but also earn rightful billing on an organization's, I use the term scorecard generically, but like sort of measuring what are your goalposts in your organization. And certainly speaking on behalf of my colleagues at Hires Poll, we are thrilled to be working with Carol and her team, but also just to, imagine this as a new normative baseline. Or by the way, when LinkedIn on their job search function has employee purpose as something people can search on. Is there anything more tangible that shows that this is part of the decision criteria, folks, Really interesting.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you for being a great friend. One of the things we're going to do, so for those of you who have listened to the end of this podcast, is that the first 10 companies that sign up for EPiQ, it's a little bit late in the year and some companies are going, yeah, I love it, but I'm going to put it in our 2024. Well, the first, few in, we'll probably get a little bit of a special, TLC, but ultimately we're going to create a cohort. And so the cohort of the first 10 that come in, or it could be 8 or 10, so that we will continue post their EPiQ research, that I will personally run 3 to 4 hour-long conversations under Chatham House rules, or as we say at Cone of silence.
But
Yeah, there you go. Mic drop. Because that's where we are in the practice. Wendy, do you want to add anything on that?
I thought you got the last thing. It's your show. But meanwhile, I was like chomping at the bit. I totally think it's about equal footing. Like, I really do think that this closing on this idea is super powerful because it is about giving purpose the metrics that show this is a company that cares about purpose, in addition to all the actionability.
Super. Well, thank you for your time, Wendy, and thank you for your commitment to truly moving the strategy forward, because you're not just research, you're research that empowers and drives decision-making forward, and decision-making that's going to impact companies and products and services and profitability, but also the critical human element that we all must have, especially in this world of AI, because it's our empathy, it's our ability to connection make and to really innovate that's truly going to allow anyone in the role touching purpose, whether you're in HR, whether you're in your communications, whether you're in strategy, to utilize it to drive your organization forward. We will have links in our show notes to more information about EPiQ. And we hope that all of you will have a dashboard that you will bring into the C-suite, and you will be, again, at a level to truly advance this with your employees, because they are your most important stakeholder. So thank you, Wendy Salomon. It is always so wonderful to be with you. I know that, we're going to get this running for a couple years, and then it's going to get its own pace. And then I'm going to have to go, oh my God, what's our next research?
I look forward to that. Thank you so much, Carol. It was great to be on.
This podcast was brought to you by some amazing people, and I'd love to thank them. Ann Hundertmark and Kristen Kenny at Carol Cone on Purpose, Pete Wright and Andy Nelson, our crack production team at True Story FM, and you, our listener. We love hearing from you, so please give us feedback. Let us know names of people you'd like to hear on a future episode. How about some new questions to ask? And also, please rate and rank us, because we really want to be as high as possible as one of the top business podcasts available, so that we can continue exploring together the importance and the activation of authentic purpose. We all know every company, every brand, every not-for-profit must define their purpose, refine it, and activate it and evolve it over time, so it has the greatest impact on business, growth, and society. And by listening to these episodes and sharing them with your colleagues and talking about them, I want to inspire you to have an amazing answer to this question: what is the power of your purpose? Thanks so much for listening.